Hello, my name is Caleb Denby, and welcome back to Game Review! Today, on Game Review, we're going to be taking a look at a game between Veselin Topalov and Viswanathan Anand from the first World Championship match that I actually followed as a chess player. This was all the way back, I believe, in 2010, back when no one knew about chess, especially not me. I was a little tiny baby boy playing chess in the 5th grade. And this match really actually got me interested in following professional chess. It was a fun match to watch, had some very interesting games, and today we're going to be taking a look at one that Topalov actually managed to win. This was Veselin against Anand, and they played a Gruenfeld. Not something you see every day in the World Championship. Veselin played knight c3. We have d5, c takes d, knight takes d. e4, knight takes c3, b takes c3, and bishop g7. So the main line of the Gruenfeld so far. Of course, there's a wide variety of ways for white to play against the Gruenfeld. In this case, Veselin chose bishop c4, one of the most popular lines. c5 was played, and now white develops this knight out to e2 rather than f3. The reason for that is against any type of bishop g4 move, white is now going to respond with f3, preserving this knight so he can control more of the dark squares in the center of the board. Knight c6 from black. We have bishop e3 from white. Castles, castles. And now knight a5 is Anand's choice in this case. And it's a pretty common way, it's a common maneuver for black, just to kick this bishop onto a less comfortable square, in this case d3. Now after b6, you'll notice this bishop's kind of in white's way here. You know, he doesn't have the full support of d4 from the queen anymore. Queen d2 is the natural continuation for white. He wants to trade off this powerful dark squared bishop for black. This is kind of black's key piece in the Gruenfeld. In this case, anticipating that this bishop would be traded off, Anand actually plays e5, challenging these dark squares right away. Topalov still plays bishop h6, and in this case, it's actually a pawn sacrifice. We see c takes d, bishop takes g7, king takes g7, we recapture on d4, and black takes on d4. And now, black is simply going to be up this pawn. And so the question is, well, what does white have in return for this pawn sacrifice? And the answer is, the dark squares around this king are, in fact, a little bit weak. And how is white going to take advantage of those? Well, it's with a very natural pawn push. First rook c1, queen d6 we see, getting this rook on this nice open file. And now white finally continues with the move f4. And he's simply going to push this pawn to f5 and rip open the king's side. First, either with f6 being threatened, with checkmates incoming, or with threats of f takes g, opening up more files for the white rook. In this case, black chose to respond to this with f6. And now after f5, we first see queen e5 from black. Knight f4 from white puts more pressure on the g6 pawn, and so black decides it's time to move this pawn out of the way up to g5. So we have a situation here where Anand has, for the moment, kept everything closed on the king's side. First, Veselin plays knight h5 check, king g8, and now he tries to open things up once again with this pawn break on h4. But after h6, we see h takes g, and once again, it's difficult to open up these files any further for Topalov. Anand has done a great job keeping these things locked down for the moment, and there's no way really for the white pieces to invade. We saw rook f3 in this game, and now this puts black in a pretty uncomfortable position. I've been talking up how much Anand has been doing a great job of keeping files closed, avoiding these pawn breaks, opening things up. Of course, when the pawn breaks don't work, what do you go for? Well, it's time for those piece sacrifices. And so white actually has a very, very nasty threat here, and that threat is what actually occurred in the game. After king f7, the way to open up the position is with, of course, the move knight takes f6, sacrificing the knight, ripping open the king, and actually winning the game. There is one move, only one move, that keeps the balance here for black. It's a weird-looking move that you wouldn't expect to solve the problems on f6. It's actually simply bishop d7. And the point is, now, after these sacrifices, what you're going to see is rook takes f6, queen takes g5, king f7, and by moving this bishop to d7, one, we've blocked off this 7th rank a bit, we're controlling some key squares using this bishop, and we've also allowed this rook to get back into the game. And these are the key points that make bishop d7 the only move for black to play. The game could continue if you try something like rook h3. Of course, we're simply going to play rook g8, and after the check, we'll drop this king back, we'll drop this bishop back as well, and we'll be controlling all of the squares around the black king. So bishop d7 was the only way to maintain the balance. Instead in the game, king f7, and now this sacrifice is just killer. King takes f6, rook h3, rook g8 was tried. Of course, this isn't as good as getting another rook into the game to defend the king though. Rook h6 check from Topalov, king f7, rook h7 check, king e8. If you play the move rook g7, we can simply take this rook, and after a move like queen takes, you're running into rook c7 check. After a move like king takes, you're simply getting crushed after queen g5. So, not rook g7, but king e8 was tried, running away, but now simply rook c7 from Topalov, getting more pieces into the attack, dominating the 7th rank in front of the king, and the end is near. King d8 was Anand's try, but now bishop b5 controls even more squares around this king, tightens the net, and after queen takes e4, we have the final move of the game that forced resignation, rook takes c8 check. And this is simply game over for Viswanathan. If you take with the rook, you're running into rook d7, and rook takes d4, picking up the queen with check. And if you take with the king, you're going to run into queen c1 check, and after you have to block, otherwise queen c7 is mate, we can take this piece, and at the end of the day, if we count the pieces, white simply has a full extra bishop. And so after rook takes c8, Viswanathan simply resigned. A beautiful game from Veselin Topalov. Got him off to a great start in his try for the World Championship. Unfortunately for him, Viswanathan managed to pull it together and ended up winning this match against Topalov anyways. Thank you very much for joining me for this episode of Game Review. My name is Caleb Denby, and I will see you next time.